So this is a continuation of my series talking about the latest audio that's come out from Darren Geddes. So this is the stuff that comes from Sunny on It's a Crime and Shame. And what I'm currently focusing on is that initial 30-minute phone call where he just flipped his narrative. Now, having listened to Sunny's live streams over the last couple of days, what I'm learning is that after he made this statement with her, he then was pushing the whole narrative thing, and Sunny believes that it was after this conversation that he got in tight with Janie and Daniel and started believing everything they were saying. I've got a different take on that, and to me, I believe that he was in tight with Daniel and Janie and that from the very beginning. I do believe that this phone call was merely his attempt before things started happening to save his own ass. And I will discuss that further after I get through all this audio. Now, I have to start by saying, if you've followed my channel for a while, you'll know that there are times when I get tangled up with trying to explain something. And thankfully, there's several subscribers who get what I'm trying to say and will explain it better for me in the comments section. And I think that's one of the many things that I love about the people that subscribe to my channel. There are a lot of people who bring unique experiences, unique knowledge to this channel, and who leave some fantastic comments in my videos based on their own experience and knowledge, and they add to our knowledge about things that we're discussing. So I'm always grateful for that kind of thing. Now, if you watched yesterday's video, you'll know that I did get in a flap at one point and say, well, hey, I'm not explaining this very well, but I'm sure someone can explain it for us in the comments section. I've always been this sort of person that I can explain the concepts really well, but when it comes to putting it all into technical terms and making it sound really academic and intelligent, that's where I fall flat. Throughout both my university degrees and through various professional development things through my professional career, I've quite often felt like the dummy in the room because I couldn't talk the talk. So I'm always grateful when people add clarification in comment sections, because I recognise that that is one of my failings. So with yesterday's video, one of our wonderful subscribers, Farm Girl, came to the rescue, and I know she's not going to mind me mentioning her name. Quite often when people make comments in my videos, if I am going to share them, a lot of the time I won't use their name, just in case they don't want me to, but I'm pretty certain that Farm Girl will allow me to do so, and she'll forgive me if I wasn't meant to. So I'll read this before we jump into the video. So Darren Geddes, manipulator extraordinaire, uses neuro-linguistic programming techniques to draw in his target. I'm just going to stick with the NLP too, because otherwise it's a mouthful. So NLP always uses rapport building and finding common ground as a way of verbal bridge building between themselves and others. Bridges only go from point A to point B, so once that bridge has been constructed, there's really no way off unless you jump over the side and forge your own path forward to reach point B. So basically, he's telling you what you're supposed to think, what you're supposed to conclude. He's telling you how to interpret the information that he's giving you, basically. Now, the full comment is actually in yesterday's video. If you want to read it in full, it's worth looking at. I'm just going to read the highlights from it. So the bridge builder, Darren, wants you to take a different route, wants you to skip all of that. So all the discovery and stuff. So she was talking about how, like, Charmaine digs into a lot of other information and stuff like that, and, really does that deep dive, trying to understand things. He doesn't want you to try and understand things. He just wants you to go on his route and reach the same conclusion that he expects you to reach. So he wants you to skip all the discovery along the way, etc. He doesn't want you to think for yourself. Just hurry up and get to point B, but only via the route I tell you to. And using tricky words, inserting feelings and ideas, but no concrete facts. You know, we've got the 1000% ironclad and a super reliable witness. And what is it that he says about receipts in one of the audio things? Something along the lines of, the receipts that I can provide are statements that will be made in court, or something like that, or sworn statements that will be made in court, or something that, like, you can't actually see it for yourself, but he's trying to tell you these are like the ultimate in receipts, even though I'm not going to show them to you. And I pointed out yesterday that he seems to think in this audio that Sunny's buying all this. He seems to think they've got some huge connection here and they're on the same wavelength. But what he doesn't realise is that you can tell from what Sunny's saying that basically she's got his number. She understands his game and she's playing him like a fiddle. This is someone who's worked in customer service for something like 30 years and understands every manipulation tactic in the book. In fact, I would imagine, based on her work history, that she could probably write the book herself. She also admits openly that she herself went through a coercive control relationship for close to 10 years. So she sees all these little things that Darren is doing. But she's got him feeling so comfortable. She's got him convinced that she's believing every word, she's hanging off every word, and that she's totally on the same wavelength as him. Anyway, this could end up being a very long video if I just try and recap everything from yesterday's video. So if you've not seen that, I recommend watching it. I will try and remember to add the link in the description for this video. If it's not there yet, you can hop into my playlist for Lily and Jack Sullivan, and it will come up as the video before this one. Now, Dingbat has just given Sunny 3 scenarios, and he's basically said that if Daniel is guilty of anything to do with the disappearance of the children, then they're no longer alive. If Malaya's guilty, or if he's innocent when it comes to the disappearance of the children, then Malaya's a hero. And then the third one is, if they're both involved, Daniel did something and Malaya's scared to open her mouth. That is the truth. I actually discussed that in yesterday's video in terms of how we can tell that is definitely the truth. But he basically, the way he's wording it, the way he's saying it, all gives it away that the truth is he knows Darren is responsible, and he knows that Malaya is too scared to speak out. And that's where we continue with the audio. In a moment, he's going to say something which confirms that that is the definite scenario.
It doesn't make sense, though, at all, Darren, for the sense of, if two people are involved in a crime, they usually stick together up until the police crack them and break them down.
Yep.
But in this case, she took off.
Now, remember, this audio was recorded back in August. So I can't figure out here whether Sunny is just still playing him for answers or if she's genuinely confused. I question if she's actually confused over this, given that she's told us that she was in a abusive relationship for 9 years. So surely she would understand if Daniel had done something to Malaya's children, then Malaya probably can't stand the sight of the guy. And we actually got a clue of that from Malaya's interview when she says, I said to him, my partner, Daniel, she really struggled to spit his name out. Even to say her partner. Right then and there, when I saw that interview, I was like, whoa, he's done something. She's deeply affected by it, and she is not in a good space in terms of what she thinks of him. And then, of course, she takes off that same day that she did that interview. And if what happened to Jack and Lily happened because Daniel flew into some sort of rage, then you would imagine she would not feel safe being anywhere near this guy. I mean, imagine if you had been living with this guy for 3 years, you had your head in the sand in terms of it's not all that bad what's going on in the relationship. Because I believe that's where she was at. I think she was convincing herself that things weren't all that bad, and that's why she didn't take off in the U-Haul in March. Because sadly, in these situations, these relationships start with love bombing. And now I did a full video on this a few months ago, explaining the coercive control and how she got to this point. But the relationship starts with some major love bombing. Not only that, it's the whole separating them from anyone who can give them a different perspective on what they're going through. But anytime things go wrong in this relationship, then you get the love bombing. It's a cycle. So you get the love bombing, and then things go pear-shaped. You might get some violence that occurs, and then they love bomb again. And the person who is at the receiving end of all this convinces themselves that the stuff in between the love bombing, that's just something it's not the real him, not the real guy, and that he was just stressed. But they also convince themselves that that's as far as it's going to go. Sure, he gave Jack some black eyes, but that's the worst of it. And he's giving them somewhere to live. If she had moved back with her grandmother, she would have to start working. And Daniel has promised her that moving in with him means that she wouldn't have to work. This is a girl who, according to Sunny, did a part-time job for a very short period of time when she was 15. Malaya doesn't know how to work. So, to her, this is a dream relationship. And if it's a bit rocky at times, she's going to wear that. She never suspected things would escalate to the point where it would cost her children their lives. Because I do believe that the DV side of things has come into play with these children. The fact that she struggled to say his name in that interview tells us a lot. She's seen the monster in that man, and she's afraid of him. So that would explain why she left with her mother. Now, I'm not saying that it's not possible that there is also some connection with this mystery dog of Janie's, because there's a lot of things that point to the possibility that that dog may have attacked one of those children. But it seems to me that Malaya has this rage towards Daniel that would suggest that definitely he did something also. But you also have the situation here where Malaya's family definitely had some inkling that things weren't right in that house. We heard Wade say that as soon as he heard that the children were missing, his immediate response was to say that Daniel was responsible. We've heard from Connie, who said that Malaya had told her about Daniel holding her down and taking her phone off her. And obviously Cindy and Wade both know that there were problems, because they were going to go and collect her with a U-Haul back in March. So you have this situation where the children are missing, and suddenly the whole family is there with Malaya, some of whom have not been allowed to see Malaya in a few years. Hayley, for example. And Hayley has said she was onto Daniel from the moment she got there. So not only does Malaya have this experience of something happening to her children to the extent that she's doing this interview and she can barely say Daniel's name, but she also suddenly has that support network back that he isolated her from, which would allow her to leave the property, leave the situation. So this is different from other cases where you've got co-conspirators, because it appears here that Daniel is the main perpetrator and Malaya's main thing that she's guilty of is of not protecting her children. I would expect that Sonny would actually understand that, so I think that she was probably just trying to get more out of Derwood. From what I've heard of Derwood, he strikes me as someone who could quite possibly be a bit of a misogynist. And I suspect that Sonny probably realised that too and was probably playing into that. Probably playing the not so smart female who isn't going to figure any of these things out for herself, making him give all the answers.
So that
and I offered her protection from Daniel too.
Yeah.
So that one sentence there is him admitting that his third scenario is the truth, that Daniel did something and Malaya was afraid. Because now he's saying, I offered her protection from Daniel. Now, whether he actually did do that or in his little fantasy world he sees himself as the sort of hero that would offer protection from the abusive partner. The point is here that after giving his 3 different scenarios, he's now said something that confirms that the third scenario is the truth.
Yeah.
So that's all. That's what I just want you to know that information and to be able to put that out when I believe Daniel's going to get nailed for this. And I think I'm going to find out more information today, believe it or not, because people, even my family and people here, they think I'm beat.
Mm-hmm.
Now we get some major Derwood stuttering going on here. So he's saying, I just want you to know that information and be able to put that out if things, and this is when he just starts to really stutter. So he's trying to say if things go pear-shaped, but he can't even get that out. He's like, if when I believe Daniel's going to get nailed for this. This is telling. This is really telling. This to me says that he's definitely trying to cover his ass. He's really, really anxious about the truth coming out about Daniel, because he's been defending Daniel from day one. He's been lying for Daniel from day one. He's been putting out this fake narrative. He's already been threatened by the RCMP with obstruction charges because he was refusing to tell them anything. And he's continued to push this story that is essentially trying to push that Daniel is innocent. So he knows that he could be in a heck of a lot of trouble when things reach a point where Daniel is charged. And I think he believed up until this point that this was all going to go away. That people might believe that the children are hidden away on a reserve somewhere, and that eventually the case would just get forgotten and he wouldn't have to worry anymore because he's done his job. And then he says, well, I'm going to find out more information today. And he's still bumbling over his words. So I actually think he's not saying that he's going to find out more information about where the children are or anything like that, or anything in relation to Daniel. He wants to find out what the situation is in terms of what information is about to come out that may incriminate Daniel and therefore also incriminate him. Because the statement has come straight after him saying he believes Daniel's going to be nailed for it. And amongst all that, he is stuttering flat out. He's really, really nervous about something in relation to Daniel being nailed for this, which makes me question his involvement in this case. I know I listened to Sunny's live and she's like, I don't think Darren is involved in any way. I think he's just caught up in selling this story. But the guy got aggressive. If he was just trying to help out Malaya, trying to help out Daniel, why did he make threats against people? Why did he become so aggressive with people? Why is he still coming out and talking and trying to push his narrative? Clearly, he's seen the writing on the wall. He's already been threatened with obstruction charges, but he's still going. Does that sound like someone who is simply just trying to be a spin doctor for someone? To me, that sounds like someone that has a stake in this game. Now, this statement that he makes where he says he thinks that people, even his family, think he's beat. I don't think most people are even paying attention to him. But you'll notice he's using the same lines for opposite stories. He's getting confused about which story he's meant to be telling right now to Sunny. Because we've heard him on live streams when it comes to him saying that he knows that the children are hidden somewhere and he thinks he's hit a point where he can't do it any longer. He thinks he's beat, that sort of thing. And now he's saying this about Daniel, about proving Daniel's involvement. This is nothing more than manipulation. It's a case of, oh, you know what? I'm a hero. I'm facing all those obstacles, but watch me. I'm going to keep fighting this. I think he believes that it makes him more convincing if he gives the impression that occasionally he hits these obstacles that are really hard to get around.
And I'm not quite yet.
You know, now let me ask you this, and so don't get me wrong. Like I said, I'm a wise person. I'm very intuitive, and so I get what you're saying, because I was literally, just before you called, I was literally going through all his messages and and all he, like, basically from this perspective, an outsider's perspective, this is how it looks. He's the hero. He's done everything. He did this. He did that. Malaya's bad. Malaya's bad. Malaya's bad. Malaya's bad. Oh, I'm not trying to talk down about Malaya, but I'm so great. I'm the knight in shining armor that she, you know, and it's almost like an obsession or something.
Is that not the perfect characteristics of a psychopath?
Now, it's interesting that Darren refers to him as a psychopath as opposed to a narcissist. Because what Sunny's describing there is a classic narcissist move. And a classic narcissist move of someone who has been in a coercive control relationship and things have gone pear-shaped. It's the need to deflect. He is afraid that Malaya is going to come out and land him in it. So he's getting in ahead of the game and making sure that he discredits Malaya. He's making sure that he paints her as the offender, not him. And it was something that was very subtle at first, but it's escalated over the last 8 months to the point of where he's now accusing Malaya of being the person who's abusive in the relationship. So it's really telling that where Sunny is basically describing things that are typical of someone who is a narcissist, that Dingbat flies straight past that one and goes straight to saying the guy is a psychopath. There's really nothing solid in what Sunny said that would point me directly at someone being a psychopath. If I knew nothing about the case, and she had just said all those things to me, my conclusion would be this guy sounds like a narcissist who is trying to control the narrative and who is deflecting and painting the semi-victim as the offender. So what else does Darren know that makes him jump straight to describing Daniel as a psychopath? That's my question.
Absolutely. And then he said that Janie, that Cindy Murray, I have it in a message that I was actually going to show in the text messages. He calls, says, I was waiting, she's a psychopath. I was waiting to see one trait, and that day I saw it when there was no tears.
Now that statement would be enough to make me believe that this guy is a psychopath. Because one of the classic narcissist moves is to flip the script and accuse people of the things that they are guilty of. I went back to talking about Darvo yesterday. It was something I spoke about a month or so back in one of my videos, which is the classic strategy of deny, attack, and then reverse victim and offender. And that's what he's doing here. He is reversing victim and offender. Malaya's a psychopath. The whole intention here is to deflect attention from him by basically applying these negative traits that are attached to him and putting them on the other person. And I must admit, it was a huge red flag when I saw that text message of him accusing Malaya of being a psychopath. Yes, I believe she is incredibly immature. I believe she is a narcissist. But I wouldn't go as far as saying that she is a psychopath or even a sociopath. This is just someone who has never learnt to take responsibility for anything in life, who has never learnt to consider others, someone who was happy to stay in an abusive relationship even though it was putting her children at serious risk.
I almost think that so I usually look into someone's eyes and soul of who they are. Malaya actually has quite a very soft eyes, like meaning when you look at her eyes, she just seems like a very kind, warm-hearted type of person for the most part.
Very mild-mannered person.
Yeah.
Now, from memory, Daniel claimed he never met Lily and Jack. And he also gave the impression that he really didn't know Malaya. But twice now in this phone call, he's said things that point to him actually knowing Malaya quite well. First of all, he claims that he had offered to protect her. Now, if he didn't know her, it's not an offer he's going to make. But now, he's referring to her as being a very mild-mannered person. He's admitted that he got to know Hayden because Hayden was living at Paddy's place. Well, we know Malaya lived at Paddy's place. We know Malaya lived at Paddy's place with the children. So here, he's basically proving himself a liar and showing that he actually does have a closer connection to Malaya than what he was letting people know.
He, on the other hand, when I look into his eyes, I almost feel like I'm talking to the devil, to be honest with you. But somebody that is so good at portraying to be something that they actually kind of fool people, because, in a sense, with him. But when I look into his eyes, I don't trust him at all. But I want to. But when I look at his eyes, it's like it's not one of those people that I go, this is a nice guy.
Did anyone else get chills when they heard Sunny making that description? I wonder if Sunny herself even listened to what she was saying. Because she just described Ted Bundy. I think the majority of people know who Ted Bundy is. He was a serial killer. He was a psychopath. But he was also a real charmer, and that's how he managed to get a lot of his victims. Honestly, if you'd have listened to that audio from Sunny and didn't know the context, then if you were familiar with Ted Bundy, you would probably jump straight to thinking that she was talking about Ted Bundy. That, to me, is really disturbing.
But anyways, so...
He believes his own lies.
He believes his own lies. He believes his own shit. And all his messages are in accordance with somebody that's almost like a full-blown narcissistic liar, you know, or a sociopath or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Psychopaths can be narcissists as well.
Absolutely.
And they love grandeur. That's where he's making his mistake. He loves the attention and he loves the grandeur, and that's why I totally befriended Daniel to open him up, to stroke his ego,
right?
To let him go,
sink himself,
get him to go.
Yeah.
Now, while I wouldn't go anywhere near describing Derwood as being a psychopath, the rest of that description that he's given sounds like he's describing himself. Aside from being controlling, he's definitely a narcissist. And he loves the grandeur. You just have to listen to the way he talks. How many times have people said about Derwood that he seems to believe his own lies? People for the last 8 months, or probably 6 months, I think, since Derwood came out, have been going around in circles trying to figure out what the heck is going on with Derwood. And one of the common themes that comes across so often is this guy definitely seems to believe his own lies. And now he's saying exactly the same thing about Daniel. And Derwood's saying, you know, he loves the attention, he loves the grandeur. Well, that sounds so much like Derwood. He certainly loves the attention, and the way he speaks, he's got this high opinion of himself. And he thinks people see him as some sort of hero, some sort of fighting for justice kind of guy. I think he almost pictures himself as the lead character in a movie, in an action movie. And he's saying, you know, that's why I totally befriended Daniel, to open him up and to stroke his ego. Well, I think there's a little bit of mutual ego stroking going on here. Now, I'm not saying that Daniel and Derwood are exactly the same. I certainly see traits in Daniel that could lead me down the path of thinking that he is a sociopath. But with Derwood, probably as far as I would go in terms of his characteristics, at the very most, sociopath. But even that, not so sure. I think he's just a narcissist who has this need to control people. But these observations from Derwood right here, they give me clarification finally in terms of what is going on with this guy. Because for the most part, I've thought this guy is manipulating people. He is selling a story for his own means. And he is a very manipulative, cunning kind of person. But there was also a part of me that listened to the way that he sounds so convinced when he was retelling Janie's story and Daniel's story that made me question if maybe he was just a little bit simple and he was believing their stories and that he was simply repeating their stories because he was a little bit simple and was somehow drawn in by them. But what he's shown us here is his ability to recognise these traits in Daniel shows us that he is very controlling. He's not fooled by Daniel. So he's in this for his own ends. He's worked very hard to come across as this bumbling dimwit when this one statement gives him away. This is someone who is very, very calculating, very manipulative, and very controlling. I mean, ask yourself this. This is a guy whose family is Malaya's family. He is admitting here that he knows, he's as close as he can get admitting that he knows that Daniel is responsible for what happened to the children. He's admitting here that Daniel is lying to the public, to the RCMP. And yet, what is he doing? He's talking to a content creator. He's not in with RCMP saying, this is what I've learnt from being around Daniel. He's talking to a content creator. And publicly, he's defending Daniel. What does that tell you about him? He's in it for himself. He knows that Daniel has done the wrong thing, but he's defending him. That would mean you would have to either have the same morals as that person that you are defending, or you would have to be caught up in the whole thing somehow and needing to protect your own ass. Sure, he can claim that he befriended Daniel because he could see what Daniel was like and he wanted to help sink him and get a confession out of him or whatever he was trying to achieve. But people with decent morals, if they see those qualities in a person, they're not going to compromise themselves and pretend to become best friends with that person. We know Daniel is quick to anger. Given his mathematical habits, he's probably somewhat unpredictable. Most people would stay well away. Derwood sees himself as the bigger predator here. He doesn't feel threatened by Daniel. He sees what Daniel is and he doesn't feel threatened. Just let that sink in for just a moment.
Did you see that smirk on his face as he was talking about the polygraph test? That, like, when someone has a smirk like that, it's almost like kind of like falls in line with the typical narcissist, that they're so proud of their work that he couldn't help but smirk during when he was like, talking. Anyways, bottom line is
that smirk, as in duper's delight, to me, that is a sign of psychopathy. That duper's delight is a trait that he shares with Chris Watts. But you know what I find disturbing? From my observations of Daniel, he is able to mask better than Chris Watts. For anyone who doesn't know who Chris Watts is, he is an American guy who ended the lives of his wife, who was pregnant with his first son, his only son, and his 2 little girls. He then took his little girls and shoved their remains in oil tanks. His wife was, I think it was a shallow grave in the oil fields. Apparently, he had plans that he was going to basically set the oil fields alight to destroy the evidence. Chris Watts does mask a lot of his expressions, but Daniel does a better job than Chris Watts. And yes, I totally agree with Sonny. He did look so pleased with himself when he's talking about passing the polygraph exam. But let's acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of people out there who have been responsible for the deaths of multiple individuals who have traits that would definitely make them psychopaths, and those individuals passed polygraph exams. And if you say your lies enough, like Daniel has done, then yes, you do start to believe your lies, and they do trip off the tongue like you're telling the truth.
Now, so that's why it even got me about, I want to ask you quickly, if you don't mind, about this whole 2 sweater thing.
You can ask me all this, but right now we have to keep it private. I'll tell you anything.
We're just having a private convo. That's all we're having right now.
Yeah.
So
now you can release this later if
shit turns.
this,
yeah.
but not now.
No, of course
Okay,
not.
go ahead.
No. So, but so yeah, so this whole two sweater shit, as I was like, wait, so, wait, if you find the kids and your sweaters happen to be there that are missing, then somehow that was all planted and you again are innocent of everything? Like, this is weird. Like, who even...
He's claiming people are setting him up.
Right.
To make it look like he abducted the kids, right?
Right. Because he
What
did.
if he's setting it up to make it look like the kids were abducted by somebody else?
Well, that's how I see it, to be honest with you.
Now, it's interesting that he hasn't continued to push the two sweater story. But I think that probably, him dropping that, probably fits in with the timing of when Malaya complained to the RCMP about Belinda allegedly saying things about Malaya online. So I wouldn't be surprised if Malaya complained about Daniel, and if one of the things that she complained about was him trying to blame her for everything that happened, because he did tone it down after that time, like around the same time that you had those accusations being levelled at Belinda. But the moment I heard that two sweater story, I was the same as Sonny. I was like, no way. He's saying that to give himself an alibi. He wants to make it look like Malaya took the two sweaters to set him up. The question is it a complete fabrication? Or is it likely that when the children's remains are found that they're going to find two sweaters with the remains? Because a lot of the time with Daniel's lies, there's usually more statements that come out that actually allow you to dig down and figure out what is the actual truth behind those lies. But the sweater statement is an outlier. It's something that he has basically offered up on its own with no other context, no other statements that tie in with it. Now, Derwood miffs up what he's trying to say here, because he says he's claiming people are setting him up, right, to make him look like he abducted the kids, right, and he keeps saying right, which is so annoying. And he says, what if he's setting it up to make it look like the kids were abducted by somebody else? So there's leakage in this. What he's basically telling us is that, yes, Daniel is trying to push the abduction thing. He's setting it up to make it look like a major abduction scenario. His brain is stuck on the notion of Daniel setting it up to look like someone else abducted the children. So that when he's trying to say that Daniel's claiming that people are setting him up to make it look like he made the children not alive, instead he comes out with to make it look like he abducted them. So not only is he showing us here Daniel's motives and Daniel's strategy, but he's showing us that he knows exactly what the situation is. So this story that he's been pushing for the last 8 months, where he claims that Malaya organised for someone to abduct the children, he's telling us here that he knows that is a lie. It's a made-up story. He's telling us this is a story that Daniel made up to deflect from him basically having done whatever it was he did to the children. He's also showing us too the different prongs to Daniel's plan. Daniel is trying to make it look like anything that's going to make him look guilty is a setup. And that's why I believe that the blanket wasn't planted, because he has pushed that so hard. He's worked so hard to convince people that people connected with Malaya planted that blanket. He's changed his story in terms of how they got that piece of blanket, because he swore that that bit of blanket was stolen out of a garbage bag, and you could see the hand-sized hole in the garbage bag. And then when people were just basically standing there laughing at him and saying, well, that's just a load of BS, all of a sudden he latched onto what I think it was Hayley had said about the bit of blanket being on a railing. And of course, at the same time, hoping that people would forget that he set up the narrative of that piece of blanket being in the garbage bag. But then at the same time, he has been pushing this whole idea of Derwood's story. Originally, we just had Derwood coming out sharing the story. And Daniel and Janie were quite cunning in the way they were giving little nuggets that were just enough to point people in the direction of Derwood's story. Janie especially seemed to latch onto that story and really push that with a lot of what she was saying. And yet, ironically, Derwood claims that he hadn't met Janie prior to that point in time. But it's definitely leakage on Derwood's part, because we know no one has ever suggested that Daniel may have actually abducted the children. Why would anyone suggest that, given that it's been pretty clear from early on that he actually didn't like Lily and Jack, that Janie didn't like Lily and Jack? The speculation has always been that Daniel did something to those children. But Derwood has glossed over that, and he's used the word abduction in the wrong spot when he should have been talking about Daniel being responsible for the children not being alive. And like I said, this is all while discussing the motivation behind everything that Daniel is saying. So Derwood is admitting he's dumping Daniel in it big time, and he's admitting that he knows the plan. So no, this is not someone who was sucked in by Janie and Daniel and wasn't smart enough to see through the stories that they were feeding him. This is someone who is a part of the cover-up. This is someone who knows the truth and still came out batting for Daniel. Now, the next bit of audio requires a bit of unpacking to really look at it properly. So I'm going to make that the beginning of tomorrow's video. This seems to be the perfect spot to end this video. Now, since I started this series, so I put the first video out yesterday, Derwood has now come out on another channel with a different story again. So I think it's fair to say that what is being said here in this audio is definitely nothing more than an attempt to cover his arse when things finally do start to fall apart for Daniel and Janie and Derwood. Now, I haven't had a chance to listen to all the new audio yet, but I did pick up on the fact that he's trying to scare people off from analysing his audio. He's basically claiming that anyone that goes against him, well, he's got a lawyer now. That lawyer is going to take every single content creator to court. And the penalties are going to be fierce. And of course, everyone who makes a comment about him as well, they're going to be taken to court as well. Yeah, right, Derwood. First of all, if anything went to court with regards to you trying to take any content creators or any commenters to court, you would only make yourself look bad. Not that it would ever get to that point, because no serious lawyer is going to look at all the audio that is out there, that you put out there, and think that your claims that your reputation is being damaged by content creators, they're just going to think that's a joke. The only person damaging your reputation, Derwood, is yourself. So, on that note, I'm going to bring it to an end there. Thank you for listening. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, hit that like button. Let's get this out there into the algorithm. and please leave a comment below. So thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I've been to